such a small market cap. If you start to all of a sudden throw in government money, you're going to have a battle between the industrials, Tesla, Samsung, Sony, the hedge funds who smell blood in the water, the investors, and the government. All three are going to be vying for the same ounce of silver. The potential is massive, and it's not why you buy it, but it is truly has an extraordinary story behind it.
That's
and
right.
I think government acknowledging
It's
that
interesting.
puts an exclamation point behind it. It's irreplaceable. Not only is it the most conductive element known to science, but to your point, why would they do it? You could argue, aside from the military-industrial complex, which I have talked with you about at length, about the need for silver to make high-tech weapons and aerospace and F-35s and Tomahawk missiles. There's all huge amounts of silver in those items, and I would argue that's the primary reason they've held it down for all of these years. The West has. But it is the most conductive element known. It is the lifeblood of energy and data and power itself. You need it in order to transmit power across the grid. And in a world running on code and current, silver doesn't just move electricity, I would argue. It moves civilization, and it does back the military-industrial complex. I haven't heard that they plan on confiscating it. What I will tell you, however, is that the U.S. government did just classify it a critical mineral. And a critical mineral means that it's part of national security and it's part of the strategic plan of the United States. And I think it's about time they did it, because almost all of the silver the United States uses for industry or for the military-industrial complex or for making silver eagles is imported from Peru, from Mexico, from Canada primarily. And, you know, anything that is critical, if you're reliant upon supply chains from other countries, you're in a compromised position. But it's not just the United States that is viewing it this way. Recently, within the last week, the Chinese Ministry of Commerce has issued new rules governing exports of silver. And they say it's a aim to step up protection of resources. And this is something that you will see, because by more countries, you'll see this. But China's the largest silver refiner in the world. And if they're restricting exports, starting in 2026, where every single export will require individual government licenses, and in essence, they're giving Beijing full control over every ounce leaving the country, and classifying it as a resource of national interest, not just the United States, who calls it critical mineral. Yeah, this is a big deal. They've put a floor underneath the price of silver, period. And so I think it's a very, very big deal. Will they confiscate it? Look, I have a different view on that. You have JP Morgan, who paid the largest fine ever issued by the Justice Department at the time of $920 million for spoofing the silver market. Now, a lot of people thought they would get RICO charged. They got off with a slap on the wrist. Their head trader, Michael Nowak, who I sat at a table with for lunch, is, I think, still in jail. But they're allowed to be the custodian still of the world's largest silver trust, SLV, along with BlackRock. So when you talk about, would it make sense to go door to door and knock on everyone's door and say, give us your silver, when the world is promoting gold and silver ownership to countries like India and China and Russia, China, who has state-sponsored gold and silver accumulation plans? If we were to do that, it's bad enough to confiscate Russian treasury bonds for whatever the reason that the U.S. government cited, which is in essence a default as the world reserve currency. It's another thing to activate eminent domain and take your own people's metal, and I think it's game over at that point. So instead, you have the world's largest silver trust or silver stockpile held by JP Morgan and BlackRock. They're also the primary custodians of GLD as well, where they could come in on a Friday night, take the metal, which, by the way, the prospectus does not allow you and I to possess it. Ironically, Saudi Arabia took a huge position in SLV and made a lot of people annoyed that it was in SLV, yet At that level, you can take possession. You have to have what's called a basket. It's a huge amount, but the custodian can limit or completely cut off redeemability as well, even to the authorized participants. But the bottom line is this: you create a vehicle that siphons all the silver into one vehicle held by JP Morgan and BlackRock, and you can, on a Friday night, they could take all of that, put it in your money market account. It's there Monday morning, and they look the world in the face and they say, what? We didn't do anything. That you can't take possession of it anyway. You can buy physical silver in the country. We just closed the fund. The prospectus gives us the right to do that. You're free to buy physical silver in this country. So if they cross that line, it's a line that you don't come back from, in my opinion. No one will ever trust us again, even their own.
That makes sense.
The own population of the United States.
Recently, the United States officially classified silver as a critical mineral, placing it in the same category as materials vital to defense, infrastructure, and technological resilience. This designation reflects a growing concern. America imports nearly all the silver it consumes, primarily from Mexico, Peru, and Canada. Any disruption, geopolitical or economic, immediately exposes the nation's vulnerabilities. And the U.S. isn't alone. China, the world's largest silver refiner, announced new export controls beginning in 2026, requiring government authorization for each outgoing shipment. These policies signal that nations now view silver not merely as a resource, but as leverage, something too valuable to leave to open markets.
No, I mean, you go back to biblical times, they were 1-to-1. Geologically, it's 7-to-1, meaning it used to be 16-to-1 for 5,000 years. And now the geological ratio, because silver is depleting, your skin is epidermal. Silver is found in nature, something called epidermis, and silver is called epithermal. It's right near the surface. So the big deposits were found long ago. It's disappearing, it's depleting. It used to be 16-to-1, it's now 7-to-1. Geologically, the ratio is 7 ounces of silver is mined for every 1 ounce of gold. And the interesting thing is, to your point, the organization, the branch of the U.S. government who wrote this critical minerals list is called the United States Geological Survey Commission. They're the ones who came out a year or two ago and said, in their estimation, silver could be one of, if not the first element struck from the periodic table of elements because it's depleting so fast. So to your point, from a standpoint of utility, of need, it's massively needed. There's nothing like it that conducts energy or light and heat the way that silver does. It's needed. Copper, people say, no, it's too slow. It doesn't work as well. It's needed. And to see it disappearing the way that it is, to see it be called critical, to see China say we're going to mitigate our exports, and when it's called critical, the U.S. can no longer export it if they decide to, if the president decides to. When you talk about it in relation to gold, yeah, I mean, it could very well close that gap. Could it go 1-to-1? Sure.
It used to be 1-to-1.
It was. Long time ago. But
okay, but
7-to-1, 10-to-1, yeah, absolutely.
Well, if it's being mined at 7-to-1 now. Now, how is gold? You said that silver is depleting. Is gold? It sounds like it's not depleting at the same amount. If it used to be 16-to-1, now it's 7-to-1. Where do they find gold? And could there be more gold than we realize, or have all the gold reserves been found compared to the silver?
Well, I think that's debatable. There are a lot of people that I respect a lot, like Big Swear, who would say that there's more gold out there than we know. But it wouldn't really be in the vested interest if it was the United States, for example, that held a lot more gold wherever. Big talks about the Grand Canyon gold, and that's probably not going to come out anytime soon.
Sure.
But even still, if you took every ounce of gold on the planet, I don't even think there's 1 ounce for every person that's living. If you took the number of people living and the ounces of gold, it's a finite supply, any way you look at it. And that's the allure. That's why it's been money. And one of the key characteristics of money is that it is a finite supply, that it is not something that can continue to expand forever at the whim of a politician. So any way you look at it.
But that sounds like silver. So what I'm trying to say is the silver to gold ratio not necessarily accurate, and perhaps silver should be a 1-to-1 already?
Yeah, it could very well be. I mean, who knows where these numbers come from? You're right. It could be. From a
Well, because some
standpoint
of
of
this is just
utility,
arbitrary from a market position, standpoint. They held the price down, and it's just kind of like we do things because that's how we do things instead of what it really needs to be. And then once people realize what it really needs to be, then the market corrects pretty quickly, as long as it's not artificially held down.
yeah, and I like the way you think, and you're right. I mean, we have to trust the numbers that we're given. But one of the things that I focus a lot on is, the big money that's importing metal into the United States. We don't know who that big money is. We can assume, we can say maybe it's the Treasury or who knows. We can see all this gold and silver flowing. We can talk about China going as the second largest producer in the world, buying all the doré and the concentrate from Mexico and Peru, paying double what the West will and shipping it back and refining it themselves. We know silver is important. But we look at the deliveries into COMEX. Now, here you're talking the most sophisticated Western traders on the planet. I mean, the most sophisticated traders in the world, and they're on Wall Street. And whoever the hell is bringing in all this silver, like a good example of it is the November contract. Now, November is not a delivery month for silver. The next delivery month is December. So far, just in the first 10 days or so of the November delivery month, which isn't a primary delivery month. You can take delivery, but it's not a delivery month from a contract standpoint. We've seen, last I looked, which was 2 days ago, 3,029 contracts were delivered as of a couple days ago at 5,000 ounces apiece. That's 15,145,000 ounces of silver. Who the hell is doing this every single month since November? We've been seeing this every single month since November. And we don't know
Since
who
last
it is.
November? Since this
Yeah,
November?
that's when Trump won the election. But what it shows for the silver delivery volume, that it's massive in a non-delivery month. There is big money who isn't just big money. To your point, they have all the information. And information is key. They know where the ball is going. And whoever it is keeps bringing in billions of dollars worth of silver into the COMEX every month and taking possession or leaving some in the exchange in what's called a eligible account. Now, it's not for delivery. It's being held in strong hands. But the amount of gold and silver coming into the country is unlike anything anyone has ever seen before in both metals. And I would argue these are the people who know the inside scoop. They don't do things at that level just for the hell of it. You're talking the biggest, most sophisticated money in the world who's closest to the information. They know where this is going.
Speculation often swirls around confiscation fears, but modern financial systems provide far subtler mechanisms. Major institutions like J.P. Morgan and BlackRock oversee enormous silver trusts, vaults containing vast quantities inaccessible to ordinary investors. While retail holders can redeem nothing, large-scale entities maintain preferential access to physical metal. The structure allows governments, in theory, to redirect metal silently without knocking on a single household door. This system replaced direct seizure with custodial concentration, where assets can be repositioned within legal frameworks. Meanwhile, silver's supply has tightened so dramatically that even China encourages its citizens to hold precious metals as part of national savings programs.
Well, we should, and I don't know what the reason is, but I can tell you I don't even think we're barely 10th on the list globally. The majority of it comes from Mexico and Peru. Mining over the last, when you talk about suppressing price in dollars in particular, around the world, prices went much higher against other currencies than it has against the dollar long ago because the dollar has been so strong as the reserve currency. But what I would say is when you have silver being held down to stupid levels for such a long time, it really hurts the ability to explore. I mean, it's expensive to explore and to dig and to mine. You have the energy costs, the cost of labor and just the cost of everything. It's a very labor and cost intensive industry. With silver not performing the way anyone thought it should, counterintuitively, that affected not only the major miners, but also the juniors and the exploration companies who have been left for dead with no investment. And it's too expensive to do much in terms of meaningful mining. You contrast that with China. For years, they've been mining gold and silver, even if it was uneconomical, because they see the big picture. They think in terms of decades or longer, and we don't. And so, yeah, we're at a massive I don't know. It's a problem, and you're seeing the Trump administration sign deals with some domestic mining companies to mine strategic elements on their behalf, and silver will benefit from that. But it's too bad that the ambition of maybe the military-industrial complex, I would argue, to hold down the price has dramatically affected the ability for exploration and junior mining companies to look for silver.
Silver's scarcity is not just a theory, it is a geological trend accelerating faster than analysts predicted. Historically, silver and gold were mined at a ratio of 16:1, but modern extraction suggests closer to 7:1. The U.S. Geological Survey has even warned that silver could be the first major element removed from the periodic table due to depletion. Unlike gold, which often remains stored for generations, silver is consumed in electronics, medical devices, solar technology, and industrial processes. Much of it is never recovered. As deposits near the surface are exhausted, mining becomes harder, costlier, and less productive. Demand is rising while nature's supply diminishes.
In a weird way, that could have helped the United States. You know, they did it in a selfish way, but if now suddenly we can reinvest our, our infrastructure in, developing these mining companies, then, and if silver and gold goes up in value and we can make money on it and we have rich deposits that were never tapped, it could end up being a positive for us in the long run.
Sure. I mean, you could make the same statement about uranium and all of these critical minerals that have really, due to regulations and restrictions and mostly the restrictions on the environment, a lot of this has expanded to other parts of the world, South America and South Africa and other countries that have exploited their reserves. It's an important deal. It really is.
Well, it could. I mean, Andy, you could think about it as, an investor doesn't sell until the investment is high, right? It could be one of those things where we were forced to hold. I mean, if you look at it that way, we were forced to hold and not take advantage of our resources because of stupid reasons, selfish reasons. And because we were forced to hold, now that we are realizing we need to mine these things, or we're, breaking the chains, the investment opportunity is high at this point.
It is, but it takes a long time to bring a mine.
I know.
Online.
We're talking decades,
years.
Aren't we?
Yeah, I mean, and that's the problem.
And we also have green energy policies. I know that in Minnesota, they have been working for decades to shut down these critical resource mines. And they've done the hoops they make these people jump through to do a mine is incredible.
Yeah, don't get me started on the policies of Minnesota. I left Minnesota largely because of those policies. And
well, it's one of the most critical mines. We have a really rich deposit in North Minnesota that could really bring jobs to the area, but really help the country strategically. And it's sitting there, it's ready to go, and they do everything they can to block it. And it's ridiculous.
Yeah, it is. It's too bad. And I have a client who spent a lot of time in the mining industry up in the Iron Belt up in northern Minnesota. I mean, I'm from Minnesota, so I'm very familiar with it. But the stories that he will tell you, it's crazy. You're right. They've done everything they can to mothball what should be exploited, instead of going around the world and being reliant on every other country, many of which we're not aligned with geopolitically, for things like silver or critical minerals or rare earths or any of the things that we need, is silly.
Behind the scenes, enormous volumes of silver have been moving into American vaults. On the COMEX Futures Exchange, non-primary delivery months, periods when few contracts should convert to physical metal, are witnessing millions of ounces withdrawn. These patterns reveal entities with deep insight, acquiring silver at unprecedented speed and scale. Their activity contradicts the narrative that silver is abundant or unremarkable. Simultaneously, exploration companies have struggled for years, starved of capital during periods of artificially suppressed prices. As costs rise and discoveries shrink, new supply remains stagnant. Yet industrial giants, sovereign funds, and hedge funds are positioning aggressively, signaling expectations of seismic price shifts.
Many of the arguments that we see coming from that side of the aisle lack logic. And it's at some point you have to think about national security, and when you realize that the U.S. literally imports almost all of its silver, yet it is needed in so many respects, it's about time that they reclassified it a critical mineral. It should have been done a long time ago. And the folks in Canada tried to call it strategic about 2 years ago to have it reclassified, and it is. And that's, it's funny because a lot of the things that I've been talking about for a long time, gold and silver, which are really the opposite of the dollar, are now being quietly embraced by the U.S. government, and both gold and silver are kind of no longer contrarian as much as they once were. Now, maybe for the mainstream it still is, but the government is looking at gold and silver as far more than archaic relics from the past. In fact, I think they are looking at gold to be part of the monetary system and looking at silver as strategic and critical as it really truly is, especially in a world that is digital. You talk about transmission of energy. It transmits civilization. Without silver, you do not have the ability to have the infrastructure that is needed to be a growing, thriving civilization. It's really important, and I think it's someone tapped Trump on the shoulder and said it's about time that we do this for this country, and I'm thankful for that. And what they've done is make it a matter of national security and national policy. They put a floor under the price of silver. I do believe that. And then you look at the largest refiner in the world, China, saying, well, we're not going to export very much anymore. It's becoming a battle. Then you look at the supplies on the London Metals Exchange, the LBMA, that are literally being bled dry. We've talked about extensively. Things are going to get interesting. And when we talk about silver, Sarah, I don't tell people to buy it to get rich or to get wealthy. It is wealth. But when you look at the size of the market cap of the silver market, it's a pimple on the elephant's rear end. It's such a small market cap. If you start to all of a sudden throw in government money, you're going to have a battle between the industrials, Tesla, Samsung, Sony, the hedge funds who smell blood in the water, the investors, and the government. All three are going to be vying for the same ounce of silver. The potential is massive, and it's not why you buy it, but it is truly has an extraordinary story behind it.
That's right.
I think government acknowledging
it's interesting.
Puts an exclamation point behind it.
Silver's story is now at the center of a global competition. Governments need it for national security. Manufacturers need it for electric cars, solar power, and electronics. Investors see a tiny market on the verge of enormous repricing. With inventories at the London bullion market draining and global refiners tightening exports, an inevitable collision is forming between technological demand, strategic necessity, and financial speculation. Silver will not simply rise because people hope it will rise because civilization itself depends on it. As nations race to secure supply, the world is beginning to acknowledge what analysts overlooked for decades. Silver is not just valuable, it is indispensable.